Hey everyone, it's Coram Ken Shreve here with a look at the stock market for Thursday, April 20th, where we did see stocks fall in reaction to more earnings reports coming in, including the likes of Tesla, Ken.
Yeah, checking Tesla down almost 10% today. So that kind of cast a pall on first quarter earnings season. We did hear from Lam Research, so we'll take a look at LRCX in the chip equipment group that reported earnings. SPS Commerce reports earnings next week. This is a supply chain management company, SPSC. And finally, Homebuilders and building stocks, they continue to outperform. So we'll take a look at installed building products, IBP.
All right, sounds like a plan. First, let's take a look at the major indexes today. The NASDAQ lower by 0.8% in today's session. We also had the Dow down 0.3%, the S&P 500 down 0.6%. The Russell 2000 also taking one of the harder hits today, down about 0.75% as it headed into the close here. But if you take a step back, and you look at the daily chart here, Ken, we can see the NASDAQ is coming down to that 12,000 level, right where that 21-day line is. So we're still holding the 21-day line. So that seems pretty good to me, but is this the type of market that is starting to wear out investors?
Yeah, possibly. I mean, it's still a tough environment out there. The focus seems to have moved away from interest rates and the Fed to the possibility of an earnings recession and what are these outlooks going to look like. I mean, we'll see a lot of companies beating on the bottom line and top line by a wide margin, but what are they going to say for the current quarter, for the full year? And Tesla talking about weaker margins. Who knows? I mean, other companies could be talking about that. So, we did see some buying during the final half hour of trading. It could have been worse on the NASDAQ. So that 0.8% decline. You can see that little buying late in the session here. So interesting to see if we're going to get a distribution day or not. Volume was tracking lower on the NASDAQ considerably for all of the session, and then volume picked up late. So if we end up getting higher volume, that would be the NASDAQ's fourth distribution day since April 5th. So, that's worth paying attention to. Volume, a close call on the S&P 500 as well. We haven't seen any distribution days on the S&P 500. So that's pretty good in this nascent uptrend. But volumes looks like a close call on both exchanges at this point.
Got it. And regarding the S&P 500's price action, it also still has room above where it is and the 21-day line. It's now right around the 10-day moving average. It's found support there previously along this move since the follow-through day here. But this seems to me like an index that could pull back more, Ken, and still not look too damaged. So what is your interpretation?
Yeah, exactly. Well, we just looked at the NASDAQ. We say that's just kind of holding above its 21-day line. You see the S&P 500 kind of right at the 10-day moving average here. So it still has a ways to go to get down to that 21-day moving average. And I mean, this index is we've seen better breadth on the NYSE than the NASDAQ. So not surprising to see this index kind of holding firm here at the 10-day line. So even though there was some selling in the market today, again, it just didn't seem to be a lot of damage done to the market, at least in terms of the price action in the major stock indexes. Again, we'll see what volume looks like. It wasn't overwhelmingly heavy. Like I said, it looks like it's going to be a very close call to what we saw yesterday, which was, it's been below average for several weeks now.
Yeah, it has. And while we're here looking at the S&P, let's also take a look at the RSP ETF, which we've been keeping tabs on. It looks like it was hit about this, same as the S&P did today, down about 0.6%. So not like we're seeing a huge difference with the overall ETF and this equal weighting today.
Yeah, and I think with RSP, we would definitely want to see this ETF get above. I think that's Tuesday's high there. So right now, this is just kind of battling near its 50-day moving average. Remains to be seen if it's going to be a resistance level or not. Hasn't retaken the line with conviction yet, but if it again can get back above that Tuesday high earlier this week, that would make RSP look a little better technically here.
Okay. And now let's take a look at the Dow, down today, but off lows. Still a pretty mild pullback from that 34,000 level. And here's IWN, the Russell 2000, still in its recent trading range. So not making a whole lot of progress, but not breaking down.
Yeah, Dow Jones, I would say, held up pretty well. We go back to the Dow here and see that it actually managed to close in the upper half of its range. We heard from IBM. Verizon got dragged down because of a weak earnings report from AT&T. So the blue chip index held up pretty well today. It's hard to say. It's probably going to close right in the middle of its range, but again, right at the 10-day line, just like the S&P 500.
Okay. And moving on now, let's take a look at ITB. Home builders, super impressive. We're going to take a look at one builder play here, but here's ITB up 1.7% today, XHB, another home construction home builder ETF here up 0.7% today. But we're really starting to see these kinds of stocks hit the accelerator.
Yeah, this time it was a nice earnings report from DR Horton that fueled more buying in the group today. We've done well with Meritage Homes, MTH on leaderboard. It's been a nice winner for us. They're going to be reporting earnings next week with a couple of other home builders. So a lot of these home builders, they popped, and a lot of charts look like Meritage. I mean, it's been a tremendous performer since it cleared this latest consolidation. But stock gave back a lot of gains today, and you can see volume picked up the pace. So this actually kind of has the look of stalling action, right? Where you see volume pick up the pace, and we saw volume increase from the prior session above average. Stock closed up 1.2%, but in the bottom half of its range. So there were definitely sellers in the stock today in heavy volume. Even though the stock did gain, it closed near its session low.
Mm-hmm. All right, next on
Not too
our list.
worrisome, though, I'll say,
Yeah.
because we got an early entry here, and
Mm-hmm.
think it's overall still acting fine.
Right. Any thoughts? So I guess we could take a look at the weekly chart. I guess previously it did have a nice rate of ascent here, so it's maybe not totally out of question to see it getting more extended. Although, let's see, before it pulled in last time, it closed this week 16.5% above the 10-week line. So yeah, it's 12% above the 10-week line. So maybe it has more to go on the upside before we could expect another pullback. But we'll have to see. We have earnings coming up in 6 days, and 2 of those days are the weekend.
Yeah, we're going to hear from more home builders next week, not only Meritage, but Century Communities, and there's a couple of others that I'll talk about in my earnings preview. But it's really great to see this outperformance. It has definitely been a pocket of strength in the market, which I've said over and over again. It's very counterintuitive when people are worried about the economy, and I think just people are seeing brighter times ahead for the home builders. Probably 6 months, 9 months, a year looking forward.
Okay, now let's take a look at LRCX. Lam Research up on its earnings report by 7% and change, and it had strong volume behind the move as well. Didn't quite get an RS line blue dot, maybe after the close and when it updates, but it's close. On the daily, we are seeing a flat base. On the weekly, it is identifying that recent peak as a handle, but it looks like a strong week here for LRCX, and this continues to be a sector worth paying attention to.
Yeah, and if you look at the last 3 up weeks in above average volume, I mean, just look at three up weeks in a row where volume kind of picked up the pace, and volume is going to be heavy this week as well. So these chip equipment firms were kind of a little rough around the edges earlier in the week. We heard from Taiwan Semiconductor today. They reported earnings. There was reports that they were going to lower their capex spending plans again. I think that came from Reuters earlier in the week, but TSM came out with earnings, and they kept their capex plans unchanged. So the results were not great at Lam Research. You can see declining earnings, declining revenue, and their guidance for the current quarter and full year was a little bit soft. But I think investors just breathed a sigh of relief, because if TSM is cutting their capex plans, that's not going to be good news for the chip equipment firms. But Lam Research rallied on that news as well.
Yeah, and in terms of an entry here, Ken, what do we do about this one? Because it is retaking these converging moving averages, but now it's coming right up to this 533 area. Should we be concerned about resistance there? Or given the strength of today's earnings reaction, what might we expect from here?
Yeah, I mean, there is a little bit of resistance at that 533. You can see, I'm not sure whether it looked like it probably topped 533 and then it backed off high. So there were a little sellers there. I think the volume today was obviously very encouraging in a low volume environment. To see a stock moving in heavy volume is encouraging. So, I mean, to me, Lam Research, if you want some chip exposure here, I thought it was a buy signal today. Held up pretty well. I mean, it closed in the upper half of the range with the NASDAQ down 0.8%. Seemed like a pretty impressive close to me.
Okay, and SPSC, this is SPS Commerce Enterprise Software Stock, which we've been keeping tabs on. Looks like next year the earnings number is expected to be quite solid, and recent reports have shown strong growth. We're going to hear from them again coming up next week. And the stock has been trading nice and tight on the right side of a base.
Yeah, I think it looks pretty solid. The relative strength line has just been kind of moving sideways as the stock forms the base. So if this starts to rally, you'd expect that RS line to start picking up the pace here. It's a thinly traded stock. You can see trades just over 150,000 shares a day, but it is a high price stock, so the average daily dollar volume is pretty decent. But this is a company that has got the earnings and the revenue that 32 or 38% decline earnings this year. Is more than likely just due to a tough comparison to 2022. You can see the record profits. A lot of companies did record profits in 2022, so you're seeing a lot of negative growth estimates this year, but you can see growth ramping back up 32% in 2024. So like the tight action here around the 10-week moving average, and like to look at setups like this ahead of earnings. So we'll see what the results look like tomorrow, but again, a pretty consistent track record of growth here.
And last but not least, IBP is the one we want to check in on. Installed Building Products. This group ranked 21 out of 197. Mentioned the blue dot earlier. We're seeing it here for IBP with earnings due in 2 weeks. So it seems like it's buying for a breakout here this week. Maybe if we were to point out some warts, would be this heavy volume on the downside. Do we know what was going on there? I guess we could take a closer look at the daily chart there and where it closed for the day and in the base. But we are seeing an attempted breakout this week after it cleared an early entry just a couple sessions ago.
Yeah, and the strength in not only in the home builders, but a lot of these building sector stocks. I mean, you can see in the company description, it's a provider of installation. This is tough to say.
It's a tongue twister.
It really is.
Installation
services. I
That's
know
funny.
I can't even say that 2 times fast. But anyway, yeah. So this is again another building sector stock that you just look at the fundamentals, look at the revenue growth in recent quarters. Now, annual earnings estimates look a little bit soft. Really focusing more on the price action here. I think the weekly chart has a good look to it, still in the early stages of breaking out of this cup base. I think that heavy volume decline as the base was forming is worth noting, but looks like we're going to have a nice accumulation week this week on the breakout, and stock that still looks pretty good here.
Yeah, maybe this was options expiration. That could have been it.
Yeah,
But this is, and maybe it's a thin stock, so maybe it could have had an outsized impact there. But at any rate, thank you, Ken.
You're welcome.
And yeah, thanks everyone for tuning in. We'll be back with more tomorrow morning on IBD Live, and we hope you join us, investors.com/IBD Live, for all the details on that. And we've got a special guest, Scott Bennett of Invest with Rules. So don't miss it. We'll see you there, and we'll see you back here tomorrow at the close to wrap up the week.